Welcome to our 2026 CIP exam info session. Thank you for taking the time to view this presentation. This session is designed for those who are taking the exam for the first time or those who need to recertify by exam and need a refresher. This is what we are going to be covering. We will start by discussing what the CIP credential is. We will go over eligibility, the application process, information about the CIP exam, and the materials you will be seeing on the exam. We will also talk about what happens after you take the exam. Because this is not a live presentation, we will not have a Q&A section, but I will provide the links to our CIP exam webpage as well as our email address at the end of the presentation so you can review the webpage and email us with any questions that come up while you are watching the presentation. What is the CIP credential? This is the Certified IRB Professional Credential. It was established in 1999, and the credential promotes ethical research practices. Credential holders are known to be highly qualified to discharge their duties pursuant to U.S. rules and regulations. The CIP credential also constitutes formal recognition of an IRB professional's broad and advanced knowledge of IRB administrative functions and expertise about HRPPs. So why become certified? There are many reasons to become certified. Some might be personal and some might be job related. I will highlight a few here, but you might have your own reasons that aren't listed. Some of the main reasons we see are that it's required for your job, or maybe you're up for a promotion and it's required to get the promotion, or you are applying for a new job and it is a requirement for that new job. You also may have been in this field for a while and you just want something showing that you have advanced knowledge of HRPP and IRB administration, as well as showcasing that you are dedicated to this field as a profession. Now the question is, how do I become certified? If this is your first time, you have to take the exam. If you are recertifying, you have a choice between recertifying by continuing education or by taking the exam. Once you are ready to start thinking about recertifying by continuing education, we do have lots of resources for that process, including info sessions. Please note that we do require candidates to recertify by exam at least once in a 9-year period from your initial certification date. So what does that mean exactly? I provided 2 scenarios here as examples, but you can do this in whatever order you would like. The first scenario would be that you take and pass the exam this year in 2026. And then the next 2 times you are up for recertification, you choose to recertify by continuing education. This would mean that the 3rd time you recertify, which would be all the way in 2035, 9 years from now, you have to recertify by exam. After that, however, you can solely recertify by continuing education if you would like. Another scenario is that you pass the exam for the first time this year in 2026, and then when you are due to recertify in 2029, you decide to renew your credential by taking the exam again. This means that for the rest of your time holding the credential, you can renew by continuing education. Some people may still want to recertify by exam even when they have the option to use continuing education credits, and that is okay. Now there's one caveat to this, and it is an important one. If at any point you let your certification lapse by more than 6 months past your expiration date, which is what we call the 6-month grace period, you have to take the exam again in order to reinstate your credential. You will also have to apply as though you are seeking initial certification, which means submitting a complete application and going through the full eligibility review process. This also means that you will again have that requirement to recertify by exam at least once in a 9-year period from the date you recertified. So please keep an eye on your expiration date and make sure you do not let it go past the 6 months, especially if you prefer and are able to recertify by continuing education. As I just mentioned expiration dates, this is what your expiration date will look like. The CIP credential has 3-year certification terms, and the expiration date is based on when you first passed your exam. If you take and pass the exam anytime between January 1st to June 30th, your credential will expire in 3 years' time on June 30th. If you take and pass the exam anytime between July 1st to December 31st, your credential will expire in 3 years' time on December 31st. For example, if after this info session you decide to apply and you pass the exam before the end of June, this means that your expiration date will be June 30, 2029. Now let's talk about the big question, which is eligibility. Eligible individuals typically work within an HRPP IRB office, and it is for those whose primary job responsibilities include substantial participation in overseeing, administering, or performing the daily activities of an IRB as part of an HRPP. Individuals must have at least 24 months of full-time eligible experience. This must have taken place within 7 years of the application date. Now, for those who solely interface with the IRB and those who only serve as an IRB member, you may not have sufficient experience to fulfill the eligibility requirements. This is a list of the job functions that would be considered to have relevant experience. If you are an IRB chair, an IRB member, or an organizational official that performs these functions, you may have experience that meets the definition of what is relevant IRB experience, and you may be eligible to sit for the certification examination. Also, please note that you do not need to participate in every single one of these job functions to be eligible. This is just a list of the job functions that are considered to have relevant experience. If you are looking at the eligibility requirements and you are not quite sure if you are eligible, what we recommend doing is filling out a work verification form for the positions that you do think are eligible. Any that you have held within the past 7 years, and ensuring that your experience is described on your CV or resume with sufficient detail, and then email those documents to certification@primer.org. We will submit your documents to the CIP Council and provide you with their feedback on if you would be eligible to sit for the exam. If you are found eligible, we will provide guidance on the next steps to take. And if you are not eligible, we will provide feedback on what exactly it might take to become eligible, or why you were not considered eligible. Now, when to apply for the exam. If this is your first time being certified, you can apply anytime. If you are recertifying, please keep in mind that you have to take and pass the exam before the end of your 6-month grace period in order to avoid a lapse in certification and ensure that you account for the time it will take to review and approve your application, in addition to finding an exam date. So definitely give yourself some time if you are recertifying by exam. If you are trying to create a timeline, plan for up to 2 weeks for your application to be processed and reviewed by the council. If you are approved, you'll be able to immediately schedule your exam. But due to test center and proctor availability, the soonest exam appointment may be several days later. And for budgeting purposes, just know that you do not need to pay the exam fee, which is $425, until you are in the process of scheduling your exam. Now for the fun part of going over the exam application process. You will create an account with PSI, which is our testing partner. You will be submitting your application online once you create an account. You will fill out one or more work verification forms depending upon how many of your past jobs you think fall within the eligibility guidelines. And you will also be submitting a CV or resume that sufficiently describes your relevant job functions. You will submit all these documents in the application through PSI. If you have any issues attaching the documents, you can email them to us at certification@primer.org. Now, for those who are recertifying and have not lapsed, you will just need to upload a current CV or resume with your exam application in order to be considered complete. And if you were certified but it has lapsed beyond the 6-month grace period, you will need to submit an application in full. So that means we need a work verification form and your CV or resume. Some tips for a successful and timely application process. Make sure you upload a work verification form for each role that you believe meets the eligibility guidelines. Please keep in mind the work verification form should be filled out per role. So for example, if you have only worked at one institution but have had different positions, you will have to fill out a work verification form per role instead of putting them all into one. So you also will definitely want to fill out and submit multiple work verification forms if you do not have 2 years of full-time experience in your current role. You can submit work verification forms for any roles held within the last 7 years that you would like to be considered in the eligibility review process. Please also make sure the dates you were in the role match what you have on your CV or resume. Make sure your CV or resume details all of your relevant work experience. Don't just list the jobs you have held, but write some detail about what you were doing. And finally, when you fill out the PSA application, please use your full legal name, exactly as shown on your identification. This means don't use a nickname, a middle name, or leave out your hyphenated name. The proctor will be checking to make sure the name on your PSI account matches exactly the name on your identification, and they're not allowed to make any judgment calls about whether or not your nickname or last name is close enough. What happens after you submit the application? Your application will undergo a review process to ensure that all of the required materials have been submitted. And again, for the quickest review process, make sure you've submitted one or more work verification forms. Make sure that at minimum 24 months of full-time experience have been covered between each work verification form. And make sure your CV or resume describes your relevant job functions. We will submit your application to the CIP Council so they can determine whether or not you are eligible. During this time, we may reach out to you for any clarification. Please allow up to 2 weeks for the review process to be conducted. It may not take the full 2 weeks, but if you have any sort of deadline required or trying to create a timeline, plan for 2 weeks. If the CIP Council has approved your application, we will let you know if they have found you to be ineligible. You will have the opportunity to share any additional information. If your application is approved, you will get an email from us that will contain exam scheduling instructions and additional exam information. You will have a 90-day window in which you must both schedule and take your exam. You will pay the exam fee once you are in the process of scheduling your exam. Some tips on scheduling your exam. You must complete the exam within the 90-day eligibility window. We do not recommend that you wait until the end of your eligibility window to take your exam. Allow yourself a buffer in case any issues arise on your exam day and you have to reschedule. You will be able to choose whether you want to take the exam in person or at home by remote proctoring, but please note that your system must meet the technical requirements in order to take the exam remotely. Whether you were taking it in person or remotely, you will see many appointments available throughout your eligibility window. But if the date and time that you want it is not available, you can keep checking back because they are continuously changing and updating. And you can reschedule your exam if you need to, but you have to do it 2 business days before you were scheduled, and you also cannot go past the end of your eligibility window. You are able to reschedule right on PSI's website in the same spot that you scheduled your exam in the first place. Okay, we have talked about the application process and the approval process. Now let's talk about the next step in the certification journey, which is actually taking the CIP exam. The CIP exam was developed by the CIP Council, and it is regularly reviewed and updated to ensure it reflects current regulations and guidance. It covers the body of knowledge about human subjects research review under the rules and regulations of the U.S. There are 130 objective multiple choice questions. The exam is 3 hours long. It is taken on a computer, and no notes or reference materials are allowed during the exam. Accommodations are provided for those who have a documented need. So now we will briefly go over the content that is on the exam. You can find the information shown on these next few slides on our website. So you do not have to try to memorize this or frantically write it down. It's called the CIP Body of Knowledge Content Outline, and you can find it at primer.org when you are looking at our CIP exam webpage in the section titled CIP Exam Content and Structure. 29% of the exam will be on human subjects protection. 54% of the exam will be on IRB responsibilities. And 17% of the exam will be on institutional responsibilities. This is a list of our exam resources and references, and again, this is not something you need to memorize on the spot, so you can find it on our website. It is called the CIP Exam References and Resources, and you can find it at primer.org when you were looking at our CIP exam webpage in the section titled CIP Exam Content and Structure. Every question on the exam does have a reference on which the question is based. So reviewing each item on this list can be a great way to prepare for the exam. The big question is how to prepare for the exam. These are the tips that I would recommend most so you can go into your exam with confidence. Make sure you focus on areas that you are not as familiar with or do not work with on a day-to-day basis. Use the body of knowledge content outline and exam references and resources to create your own study guide that complements your learning style. It'll be hard work, but it will pay off if you pass the exam. If you think you have studied enough, study even more. I cannot stress that enough. We do have a 50-question practice exam available through PSI's website that will mimic testing conditions and provide you with a brief overview of what types of questions and content you will experience on the test. And finally, if you want to link up with a virtual or local study partner, we do have a Study Buddy questionnaire. You can fill it out if you want to be put on the list to get matched with a study buddy. Primer has recently released a new resource for those preparing for their certification exams. The new resource recently released by Primer is the CIP Companion. The CIP Companion is a web-based study tool designed to help you prepare for the CIP certification exam. It consolidates regulatory source materials, flashcards, charts, historical timelines, and study tools in a single interactive notebook. The companion complements the CIP exam body of knowledge content outline and work experience verification form to help candidates organize their approach to exam preparation. It is available for free for Primer members as a member benefit. Non-members can purchase for $150. The CIP companion can be found at the address located just below the blue graphic on the slide. Once you have taken the exam, then you'll be wondering when you will see your results. If you are at a testing center, most likely you will get your results from the proctor as soon as you are leaving the test center. If you tested remotely, or regardless of where you test, you will get your exam results and score report by email within 1 hour of finishing the exam. The score report can be an important study tool if you do not pass, because you can review the score report and focus your studying on the sections where improvement is needed for the next time. If you pass the exam, you'll receive a digital certificate that will be available in your Primer profile. We will email you a confirmation that your certificate was created, as well as contain an attachment with a letter that has your certification details. If you are recertifying, it will have the date of your original certification, so you can have a record of that. If you do not pass the exam, you will be able to reapply after 90 days. Please note that if you submit an application before the 90-day mark, we will not be able to process it any earlier. You will have to submit a full application, so this includes the work verification form with an updated signature on it, as well as a current CV or resume. You will go through the review process again, but because you were approved in the past, this should be expedited. And please keep in mind, you will have to pay another exam fee once you are ready to schedule the next exam attempt. For those of you who are currently certified who are recertifying by exam, please be reassured that if you do not pass on your first try, you will still remain certified through the end of your grace period. You will be able to attempt the exam again in 90 days, and you will have to pass the exam by the end of your grace period in order to avoid a lapse in certification. This is one of the reasons why we recommend giving yourself plenty of time to recertify prior to the expiration date, in case anything does delay your timeline. Lastly, anyone who does not pass the exam and wants to try again, you're able to attempt the exam as many times as you need, as long as you follow the steps above. Now, we do want to make sure that you are aware we will not share your exam details with your colleagues, your supervisor, a future employer, or anyone else without written permission from you. And this is regardless of if you pass or fail. Even if you are in the beginning stages of the process, we still will not share any information without your permission. That brings us to the end of the presentation. I encourage you to visit the CIP exam webpage on our website, because most of this information is there. So you forgot something or want to look back through it again, you'll be able to find it on the website. You can also email us at certification@primer.org, and we will happily answer your questions.